Yeah, we may have to break out the pieces to Ticket to Ride and have them move on the tracks or something.
That sounds good. I got my aura notes.
Yeah. All right. Yeah, I am not never to disappoint there, Tony. You, sir, come more prepared than I do. So
always made my notes for heavy cardboard talks, and
I know, dude. You were one of the things that always helped with is you never missed important points.
Well, I don't know.
And I really appreciate that. I really did. If you missed important points, they were more, prior omissions. You at least gave it some time and put on some more thought than a lot of times when I get done with the review, and even when I make my notes, I always am like, oh crap, I just totally forgot that. I forgot to say that. I am. We here have our live recording started, and it looks like Murr is here. And just heard his voice. The voices coming from the computer room. Sorry, Murr. I changed the recording time and did not, unfortunately, update the YouTube. So he's been waiting for us for a good hour and a half.
Oh, really?
Thanks for the dedication.
Pretty much on time.
we are on time right now. It's my mistake. I take full responsibility. The recording said 7:30 p.m. It was some sort of a mistake on when I had set up the YouTube. So maybe it was like the original time that I had it scheduled for before we did the rescheduling. So I don't remember. Maybe I just screwed up and never changed that in the first place. Whatever it is, I apologize. And Joe, I just shared the.
Is that Murr in Florida?
Yes.
Oh man, I love Murr. He's cool.
You know Murr too. All right,
4,000 days in a row he's played.
Yes, yeah, that Murr, the legend, the man, the myth.
Oh, I game vicariously through Murr, actually.
Don't we all? You would be. I wonder what's the longest streak of 18xx games ever played in one go.
Whoa. In a day?
Well, I mean, longest like Murr streak. How many days without missing an 18xx game?
For me, 4 at HeavyCon.
That's the
Was your brain functional after that?
and at Chattanooga, played like 10 games in 4 days in Chattanooga.
Lordy.
Whew. Yeah, boy, how'd you fit all those in there, man? That had to have been some gaming into the wee hours.
Well, not necessarily, because I always wanted to get to bed at a reasonable hour so that I could be, not too stupid in the morning. But, contrary to popular myth, not all games are 8, 10, 12 hours. There are such things as 3 and 4 hour games.
Mm-hmm. That's absolutely true. Yeah. Trent played 18 USA, I think, which is what, the 18-17? Yes. I want to say that one for him took a long time at BGGCon, as I recall.
Yeah, it's pretty fabulous game though. I'm such a nerd. Look right here. I have.
He's got it right behind him.
Well, this isn't the game. This is just charters and certificates and tokens for historical companies that are spread across the rest of the United States, so that I don't have to play with 1817's components.
So that is like entirely cosmetic, is what I'm gleaning from that.
Yeah, because I don't want to start a Pennsylvania Railroad in Los Angeles.
Oh come on!
Oh, so because 18 USA just basically takes, it uses the same what does it use? Like the same map?
No, it's a map of the whole U.S. instead of just Northeast.
Oh, but you're using the same companies that are all from 1817. Okay, I get you.
Because honestly, they're just a color, But Chad has the game. I don't have the game. But together, he and I picked out a whole bunch of historical companies from all over the country, so that we can.
So you actually put that thing together, then?
Yeah, it's fun stuff. I'm a nerd.
Killer, man, killer.
I'd never argue with someone who has a sword on the wall, so that's cool.
I have 4. I'm a big history buff, especially the American Civil War. So that's
you and Carissa should get together. She loves the American Civil War as well. I showed her that copy of that Beast 2 player game that you tried, and she just drooled.
The Civil War, right? Like the big one, the new GMT one?
Yeah, the big monstrosity in the box. Yeah. She's like, that looks so cool. I'm like, yeah, it does.
Yeah. It is.
Well, with the Mur streak apparently is now a term, and I think that Mur's got a streak in a couple of different ways. He's got his game streak going on, which apparently, Tony, you overblew that one just a little bit.
Yeah, it's not 4,000, but it's something like that.
Yeah, I mean, you just as soon could be, right? It's 4 years is what it is, man. So I think that the Mur streak is also going on with episodes of the Longview podcast that he's been present for. I think there was 1 week of podcasting with me and TC, and I feel like Mur was there for every single day of it. We re-recorded 4 times in 1 week.
Oh God, our binge, yeah. I was listening to like our later ones, and God, we were like so running out of gas. It was hilarious.
We should be 100% good to go tonight, though. And before we get started here, does anybody have anything specific? Like, is there Tony? Is there a way that you would like for me to specifically introduce you now, or
whatever, Tony?
Whatever, Tony.
Tony, who enjoys contributing to the podcasts and the content of my friends.
Yeah. All right. I'll cook up something. I'll use that. I'll bake that into a pie. All right.
Oh, tasty pie.
All right, guys. So, Tony, we'll just get this kicked off, right? TC, anything else for you?
Nope. I'm going to just ride this one out and contribute what little I can. I am very curious to hear about this one. I've talked to a lot of people who played it, and it's really high on the Rosenberg scale, apparently.
So
yes.
You have not played it, TC?
I have not.
Okay, and Joe, you have, right?
I have. Until recently, I think TC's only Rosenberg game was Babel.
Yep.
Yeah. Me and TC could almost, like, together, like, I think we could almost talk about all the games we play without overlap.
Wow. Pretty much, yeah.
Yeah, which is why as co-hosts, it's almost like we fill in a lot of the gaps, you know. There would definitely, this teeter-totter somehow balances somewhere in the middle.
Nice.
Yeah, it works out really well.
All right, well, here we go, guys. 3, 2, 1. Hello and welcome to the Longview podcast. And we have a very special Uwe Rosenberg episode coming to you tonight. And we have a very special guest to do such a thing. We are going to be talking about Or at Labora, one of the least randomist games ever in existence. I think when you include zero randomness in a game, you kind of become one of the least ones. And we have a man who has kind of staked his reputation on the what is it, the defamation of any game altering randomness, and this is a guy who's been around, who's been podcasting for quite a while, who came at you, started with Heavy Cardboard, and since then has moved on to different projects here and there, and just loves to come and contribute and continue to talk up heavy games, and in this case more of a Euro heavy game. But without further ado, Tony Fryer, welcome back.
Thanks. Great to be back.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I'm really looking forward to hearing about your take on Or at Labora, because you've always been a voice, kind of a singular voice in a lot of what I've heard you say on the air, and it's been one of those things where it's always been a nice breath of fresh air to hear from you. So
thank you.
Anytime I can get you on the air, man, you better believe that we'll be doing it here in the Longview, and any other way I can coax you into it.
All you got to do is set an appointment.
And that's true, man. You are one of the easiest guys to work with. I really appreciate that. You have made, definitely with the scheduling of the Longview, I appreciate your willingness to work with TC and I, you know, and with all the time difference between us. But it kind of works out that you kind of split the gap between the two time zones.
Cool.
Being in Colorado helps.
Yeah, well, and I'm also joined by TC Reed. TC, how you doing?
Doing great. We're not talking about Gettysburg, Martin Wallace's Gettysburg. Oh, man, I might be up the river on this podcast. Sorry, guys.
That's what I'm willing to talk about.
I know. I want to talk. Every time I see you, Tony, I'm like, I want to talk about Gettysburg. Get Carissa on and talk about Martin Wallace Gettysburg. But no, we talked about Or Labora or some 18XX games. One of these days, Tony, one of these days, we're going to do that.
I think we may have already scheduled our next episode. If that's what it's going to be, we're going to have we're going to have a four-person podcast. We're going to be having Carissa join us as well. I think that we should almost start booking that.
Yes.
Do it.
I'll call Carissa right now and say, honey, we're on.
Okay, not that soon, man. We promised people we're at Labora here. We're going to deliver we're at Labora.
Okay, fine. We'll get through this.
OTC, no, this is my time. You let me have this, and you don't talk down on this one.
I will not. It's your baby. It's your time. I'll let you have it. It's all good. And Tony too. It'd be a 2-against-1 beatdown, and I am not up for that tonight. I am going to listen about this wonderful, wonderful game.
There you go. I think a 2v1 beatdown sounds pretty good already. What do you think, Tony?
Absolutely.
I also think I forgot to introduce myself. I'm Joe Sallin. I'm one of the hosts of the Longview podcast. I haven't been doing this for all too long, so please pardon all of my discretions. Anyway, this has been an episode that I am very excited for. I know, Tony, I first heard from you about Aura at Labora when you were talking about your favorite Uwe Rosenberg games. It was actually your statements about this game got me interested in picking up my own copy. And at one time, I loved Aura at Labora so much, and you can't say this about all too many games for me, that I owned 2 copies of it.
What?
Yes, that is right. That is right. The new edition came out, and I wanted to see how amazing it was. And it had upgraded chipboard for like the player mats, and that made it so I couldn't use my handy dandy toolbox full of goods. So I ended up getting rid of the nicer copy. Yeah.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, I actually, they still haven't warped my cardstock, thin.
Yeah.
Yeah, looks a little thin. Monty Python joke there. It looks wafer thin.
Wafer thin. Yeah. I thought the only game I've owned 2 copies of was Notre Dame, just because I happened to buy one, and then I got the 10th anniversary upgrade.
Yeah, which came with all that extra crap, man. I still need to pick up a lot of that stuff. So
it's got an upgrade for Castles of Burgundy.
This is the most bizarrely banal upgrade pack. Like, it was just chipboard, and to me, functionality did not improve the functionality. It just made it so that it was on like more of a mounted board. And I suppose it made it more similar like to other productions, other Rosenberg games. Not many Rosenberg games utilize, the card stock. So I suppose that it brought it up to those, but it didn't really do much else. So yeah, like I said, so that it would all fit in one box, I ended up moving on the nicer copy.
My copy is an older copy, and then when Lookout first came out with the chipboard ones, they were selling them on their website. So I just bought them from Germany. So my copy's got the thin ones and the thick ones in there.
Oh, absolutely. And I think it also kind of worked out to where I had like math traded for the older edition, and this was like I had checked those boxes on the math trade, and then I had bought the newer edition when it went on sale on an online website, and I think what ended up happening was I forgot to uncheck those boxes, so I ended up with 2 copies, and this is why I don't do math trades anymore.
Because of the math.
Exactly, yeah. I take the math out of the math trade. Yes. Speaking of online game stores, we are sponsored, the Longview sponsored by Game Surplus. So check them out, gamesurplus.com. It's an amazing online game store where Carmen, the owner, and it's the sole not the sole guy who runs it. It's an industry, but he does an awesome job of tracking down hard to find games, which would be Aura Labora at this time. So I'm not saying that Carmen will be able to to divine a copy, to somehow like conjure you a copy out of thin air. He's not in the art of alchemy, unfortunately, but he certainly can find you some hard to find games, and you should check them out. Gamesurplus.com.
One thing about Carmen and Elaine, and they are worthy of support because they are fantastic people. They really, really are.
Yes, absolutely. So, I think that since I've been doing this, I've got a shipment coming in, but Carmen has always just gone, he's always done all that he can to track down any game that I'm looking for. And, with podcast picks here, if you search on the podcast picks section of the website, you can actually find a discount, which I'm going to leave it to UTC, please, to make sure that the discount is it Is it just the long view? I forget what the coupon code is.
I'll have to consult my daughter. She recorded that specifically.
It's already been recorded, so you're just going to already slap that in. So you should have already heard that the podcast.
Whatever she said should still stand. Unless something has changed, which I don't think it has.
Yep. So exciting news there. You can get a great discount on an already really good price. Check them out, gamesurplus.com. And thanks for letting our listeners know about that, Tony. So, sir,
yes,
you have been playing Or at Labora, like I said, for quite longer than I have been. At least you were the person who sort of introduced me to the game in the first place. Would you like to take us on a little bit of a journey back into when you were first introduced to the game and what interested you about it?
Gosh, that is going back a few years then.
The Wayback Machine. Let's go back on the Wayback Machine.
The Wayback Machine. Yeah, as I started, enjoying to play heavier games, this was one that was mentioned to me, and bought a copy, started playing it, and just, fell in love with the game. Completely fell in love with the game.
Was this your first Rosenberg game or among them, or was this? No,
Agricola.
Okay.
Would be the first one in there, and then Le Havre, and then Or at Labora is how I came to this game.
Okay, and so the last I'd heard, this was one of your favorites. Now I know Le Havre occupied also a very high position for you.
Yeah, I have a mixed relationship with Herr Rosenberg. And, some of his games don't appeal to me at all, and some of his games really appeal to me greatly. And right now, I would say that Le Havre and Or at Labora are probably inseparable at the top of my Rosenberg tree, I guess. Then Agricola right below that, and then some others. Glass Road, Gates of Loyang, Patchwork, and Caverna, in that order. That's kind of the Rosenbergs that I enjoy.
And you do enjoy Caverna, sir.
I do.
What about Feast for Odin? How is that still standing up for you?
I hate it. Got rid of it.
Okay. Wow, look at me bringing up bad memories. Sorry about that.
Yeah. It turned me off. There was some randomness in there, with the cards, the way they come out and everything, and you didn't really enjoy some of the strategies, like the emigration. And things like that. And so we even tinkered around with making the cards a market and everything. But in the end, just for where my tastes are, the game just wasn't worth doing that. So
what was it about, just I guess in a nutshell, what was it about Or at Labora that did suit your tastes?
The incredible resource conversion that's in the game. And there is no randomness or luck or anything like that in the game, and just the ability, those your monks, right? Your prior, and the ability to place those guys, how they come back to you, the ability to use someone else's prior, which has some definite strategies in there. Those things really appealed to me. I like building my tableau. I like the spatial arrangement. I have a whole list of likes that we're going to go through, but the spatial arrangement of my building cards on my tableau, and I can grow my tableau by putting more landscape tiles around it. All those kind of things I really, really like.
Definitely. Yeah. The tableau building element to this one seems to be on just spatially a little bit more than you'd find in, say, Agricola, but still not quite on par with, some of his much more intricate placement games where things are, have to be in very specific spots. Feast for Odin.
Right.
He will not be named.
Your greenhouse cannot touch.
So that's... Yeah, thanks for giving us just a little bit of a brief overview. And Tony, I just would like to turn it over now to you. How do you play? How does it fit in with other games? I leave it up to you. You, sir, have got the detailed notes, and I would like you to do it in whatever order makes most sense to you.
Okay. Well, I kind of made a couple of bullet points on my outline here. One is the things I feel much love for. The things I feel less love for about this game. the Ireland versus France.
Aha, yes. I was going. That's definitely a point.
Yeah. And then just, kind of some summary thoughts. So
starting off, the things you have much love for.
The wheel, right? The resource wheel.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm looking at this. This looks nuts.
It's really cool. And there's several different versions. You got Ireland and France and different player counts and things like that. And it's just it's pretty cool the way it works. Every turn the little arm moves and all the goods there's one more of each good all of a sudden, and the competition to get those goods off of that wheel and into your tableau is really fun. It's that same feeling that's in Le Havre and in Agricola, where it's like, I really need that peat, but there's 7 wood. I don't need 7 wood, but I can't pass up 7 wood. Those kinds of decisions.
Those tough choices, absolutely.
Yeah.
So you can only do that you can only do that at a particular time when it shows up on the wheel, or?
Yeah, when it's your turn, you have the ability to place a worker into your tableau or use a worker in someone else's tableau, but that'll cost you a little bit, right? To gain some resource on the wheel. So if wood is sitting over here at 3 and I, go cut down trees, then I get 3 wood. Okay. So I'll take 3 little wood tiles and put them on my player mat. Oh yes, player mats. Can you see that?
Oh, that is not stock. That is not. I do not have that in my game.
It's jealousy.
These are online. Let's see. I have it written down here because I can't remember the guy's name. These are online at BGG, and you just print these out and laminate them or whatever, because I laminate everything. And
I have a laminator as well. Yeah.
These things are amazing to organize my goods on. I guess I can have them in piles and stuff, but I don't know. I guess I'm somewhat of a OCD.
Oh, no, that makes perfect sense, dude. I printed off one of those for Le Havre, but I don't have a color one here at home, and it gets a little bit murky when you're using a school. Yes, I do the Gamers Club at school, but technically, is it okay for me to print off color printing on my work computer for?
Absolutely.
This is resource conversion for a study I'm doing in class.
It is. I'm the Gamers Club dude. So I mean, technically anything I put into my games is a part of the club. So to me, there's some deniability. But let's just say that it's definitely pulled me back from it a little bit. I didn't mean to divert us there, Tony. I think that those resource mats are very helpful, because what's especially helpful there is that they are organized so that you can shoot a glance across the table and be able to see what your opponents have, as opposed to that guy that just puts all of his stuff in one big pile, and you're like, hold on, how many of those do you got? You really do need to know. I mean, this game, like Tony has said, there's no randomness. It's important, that it's clear how much you have of these things, not just for yourself, but for other players to be able to gauge whether or not you're a threat.
Yep. I need to know how much clay you have, because if I see you eyeing that one particular building, I might be able to wait a little bit and get greedy and build it next turn or something. But need to know, right? And all monks need to have their goods organized. That's just the way monks are. It's the Lorens, Lorens is the name of the BGG user that put those up on there. They're very good. He's got version 2 up there. I also, we touched on the spatial element of the game, and I really love that. I love the way the villages, it's always a struggle to get your villages out there and what you're going to pay to get which one out onto the board. And I love the way that they amplify the points for the guys that are orthogonal to them. And again, being able to put the different terrain cards into my tableau so that I can have more room to build. And, your yellow buildings have to be by each other, and the terrain cards have, well, let's see, I want this long strip, so this side has more wood than peat. This side, you know what I mean? Like, you have to make choices.
Yeah, you really do on what, what's going to be on each side of it. You're right.
And the first guy to buy one pays a lesser price than the next person to buy one, because as you go through the stack, that, property just keeps getting more expensive, just like in real life, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I really, really dig the spatial stuff. Any game that's got a good spatial element, I'm probably going to be wanting to check it out.
You did mention patchwork, and that's kind of the gig there.
Oh yeah, and I love the button economy.
Oh, the button economy, that's pretty slick.
It is
like that. First time I played patchwork, I found out very quickly the penalty for having empty spaces. I went into negative numbers on that game.
I think that might be one of the most negative starting games ever. It's like, what is it? Negative 90. What is it? 9 times 9, right? So
81.
So negative 162. And you start with like $5, right?
Yeah, that end game can potentially reach out and slap you really hard in the face, and you go, "Oh, I'm not doing that again."
Yeah, you definitely need to go for the bigger tiles. Yeah, here it's not such a simple button economy. There's an awful lot more, though buttons are probably a part of at least one of the objects that you can convert or sell in the game. So you'd mentioned you mentioned the spatial aspect here, Tony.
Mm-hmm.
I guess I don't want to move on yet from things that you love the most, but you did preface with the excellent resource conversion here. So, what exactly about this economy distinguishes it?
I don't know. Is it an economy? I reserve that for money, I guess, in my head. Maybe I'm just defective.
No. That's fair enough. I mean, you're not making there isn't even is there a money like coin?
There is.
Yeah.
There are coins.
Okay. Yeah, that's right, because I'm holding it. This thing costs 8 coins that I got in my hand. So yeah.
But yeah, I like the progression of the conversion. So this thing can become this, or I can use it for that, that kind of thing. So like straw, and how things have multiple uses. Straw, it can be used in some of the buildings. It can be used for energy, but it's not really efficient energy. You can wood and charcoal and peat and all those things are much better at energy. I just like those choices because no one thing does only one thing or have only one purpose.
Mm-hmm.
So you have to, I guess that progression it's like a spider web,
Mm-hmm.
It's not linear at all. So I enjoy that stuff. It makes me have tough decisions about how I want to spend and handle my resources.
Yeah, absolutely. It is more like the resource conversion is consistently challenging you with it. It's almost like every single little piece goes along its own little development track that makes, that forks off at several different points.
Absolutely, man.
Just to interrupt, how do you win the game? What's the goal here?
Points.
Is this
points,
the accumulation
sir.
of points? Okay.
Yes. No, you do not just attack each other until you kicked each other into a pulp and one person is the last person left standing over the wreckage.
Wow. Okay. Sorry. Asking.
Can't be the butterbeer here,
that simple. I'm sorry.
Yeah, some of the goods that you end up with at some of the fringes of the resource conversion are worth victory points.
Okay.
Bunches of them too, right? Isn't there? There's like a 30-pointer, right? That they call like a relic. What's it called?
The
wonders.
Yeah,
wonders.
But the relics are worth points too,
Mm-hmm.
But it's better to convert them into wonders.
And there's something that maybe we can entice TC into this one with. You have relics in this game, TC. Relics, like saints' bones and stuff.
The reliquary, yes.
You get points.
Give you special powers, or just victory points from them.
It's just victory points.
But
they're still relics, TC.
Okay. Awesome. Sweet. Bring it.
It says you can get saints' bones and they're worth points.
That's right. Pretty cool. I got some bones here.
It's like the monastery theme of it. Yeah. So, what are some of the more things that you enjoy about this game? What are some of the the things you like most?
Sure. I have 3 monks, a prior and 2 monks, I guess, really, right?
Yeah.
And those are my workers, and I can't get them back until they're all used.
Mm-hmm.
And so I'm kind of, when I'm taking my actions, I'm kind of blocking my own future actions until all of my monks are gone.
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes you guys, as the other players in the game, can help me out by using one of my monks at one of my buildings.
Mm-hmm.
And that help me out goes two ways. Hey, if it's my last monk, that's cool. I'll get them back. And if it's not my last monk, well, thanks. Thanks for using my monk on a building that I wanted to use.
Yeah, on your own buildings. You're
Right.
talking about using other people's workers on their buildings. That's kind of an interesting little twist here, and I'm not familiar with many other worker placement games that have quite that type of interaction.
No, it's cool. I definitely like the worker placement aspect of this. And I like the blocking stuff. You know, I like it being tougher.
Oh, yes, it definitely is. And it's not so much of a mind control, like I said earlier. It's more like a bribe, right? You've got different ways that you can pay for this, you know, this privilege.
Yeah. A coin at the beginning of the game, 2 coins. Or you can give, say, for example, if you're playing Ireland, you could give whiskey. But like, sadly, you're not really giving the whiskey. You're kind of like drinking it because it goes away. So
it just goes poof. Yeah,
right.
You just spend a whiskey.
You gave up a victory point, but I didn't get squat.
That's right.
And you used my building.
Yep.
Wow. That sounds better than relics.
So yeah, you have whiskey and relics. You can get them both, TC. You can get drunk, and then you can sit there. You can
with someone's bones.
Use the bones to stir the drink.
Yeah, yeah.
I like part of that worker placement aspect is when I build a building, if my prior is available, I could put him in that building and use it right now.
Mm-hmm.
And I really like that. And that also weaves its way back into, what if the prior was my last guy and you paid for his use? You just robbed me of that possibility. Darn you. You know, so I like stuff like that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, there are definitely some big kind of points, you know, like choke points almost, like where if you can see somebody that's kind of maybe laid themselves bare in that situation, I would say if you're sitting there, you've used your other 2 workers but not your prior, then you're kind of just asking for it.
Indeed.
I agree though. Finding those moments and just taking advantage of that. This game offers all kinds of those types of windows for you to be looking through.
Joe, what player counts have you done OEL at?
I have done. I thought you were asking when you first started that. I was like, oh no, he's bringing up 18OE again. 18OE.
OEL. We're at Labora.
I have played it at let's see here. I think my first game was played at 3 players. And then after that, I think I've played 2 games at 2 players. So I never have played with the full 4, and I've kind of been warned against it, though have no personal experience. How about you, Tony?
Yeah, all the counts, and I love the game at 2.
Yeah.
It's really tight.
There's like 2 different versions of the 2-player game, isn't there? There's kind of a
long and a short.
Yeah. Well,
And
there's the full game and the we don't have enough time to play the full game.
The long game, yes. The long view. I like to take the long view of Aura et Labora.
Mm-hmm.
One of my fondest memories was at the very first HeavyCon. Me and one of my friends, Brian O, played 2-player long version, and it was just so fun, man. We were both playing very, very well. Brian won and ended up winning by a fair margin. He schooled me.
Was whiskey involved?
No.
You guys playing on the wine side then? France?
I actually don't remember if we played Ireland or France, but it was just one of my top gaming experiences, you know, because Brian's a super guy, number 1, and this is a fantastic game, especially at 2. And it was just one of my favorites. And ever since then, I've really been hooked on the 2-player version of this. And like you, the 3-player version is also very good. And the 4-player version is good too, but I don't know. I find it hard to keep track of what buildings my 3 opponents have and always end up going, what is that? Who's got the, that kind of stuff. So
it's a lot of information. In a way, it kind of reminds me of Le Havre just a bit, because it spreads things out a little bit more. Le Havre does a better job, I would say, of scaling than or at Labora, in my opinion, just because from 2 to 3 was quite, it's a lot different. There's a lot of information to track here, and because of because you want to sort of use an opponent's building before they do, you want to know kind of generally what they're going to do, and all that stuff to keep in your head. The more opponents, the more difficult that gets.
For sure.
Yeah. For sure? Question mark?
For
Maybe
sure.
that's the
Sure, right. Question mark. I get it. I'm slow. It was like a Joker.
Yeah, there you go, man. You pulled it. And I just So definitely the 2-player game, I would say, is what I thought, this is when I'm going to reach for this game. If I want like a really meaty, heavy, lots of decisions to make and no sort of randomness at all, and one that turns into a chess match, strictly because this game sets up static and does not change. Everything that's going to come out in the game, not everything is available at the start, but everything that's going to come out is going to come out at a fixed point, and you can predict that. Because of that, it really does just become more of a chess match where as you're playing, you can cut people off knowing full well what you've done. I mean, the impact of your actions is never something that's trivial, and because of a card flip, you're like, oh, well, you get it now anyway. It is very chess-like, and I think for that reason also, 2 players is the number count that I've fallen in love with it at as well.
Right on. No, the excellent point. It is very much a good chess match. Yeah, I like that. So there are a couple things I'm a little less enamored with.
Sure.
In the game, and number one is there's only 2 Milus to play in, Ireland and France.
Yes. Oh my goodness. I was worried because that's one of my biggest gripes about it. And I was like, I wonder if Tony's going to have like a whole bunch of, no, this is the reason for, because I feel like Uwe Rosenberg went on 2 big vacations, designed a variant of Or at Labora for each, and then moved on with his life.
Yeah.
And I'm like, no, you got to keep updating this. You got to keep giving me more places, because it's something that keeps me wanting to come back to it. It keeps it, especially with, it keeps it something that I can sell to my even more Cult of the New friends than I am, and I don't want to be Cult of the New. The Longview podcast is not exactly
I guarantee you I would rather play this game than half the stuff that's come out this year.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, this is a good one, and that's pretty high praise coming from TC. So
that's cool. So like back long time ago, been what couple years now, in my heavy cardboard days, we did an Uwe Rosenberg episode
special. Yes, and I remember that.
I gave for free to Uwe Rosenberg an idea for a third Milu. It was Russia. Because like they have religion, right? They have the Orthodox Christian faith. They have woods, they have peat, they have grain, they have all that stuff, sheep, right? And here's what else they have: potatoes and caviar. Right? And plus the potatoes and the grain, you could make vodka out of either. So that's the high level good, vodka, right?
Exactly.
And here's what I don't understand: there's still no Russia expansion. So what the hell?
You're totally right. You've got the wine belt, you've got the whiskey belt, and is beer is one of them too, right? Beer's already in one of these, or am I mistaking it for a different game?
No, beer's in there.
Yeah, beer's already in here. So I mean, we've got our wine belt, we've got our beer belt, and we've got our whiskey belt. The vodka belt needs some loving. I'm right there with you, dude. That is genius. I never thought about that.
So does Uwe listen to the show? Because we need to get him on that.
Yeah, hopefully, man. Maybe he'll listen to this as that free idea. Maybe round 2. Yeah. He sold it to me. I'm buying it. Right, I like the price.
Yes. you touched on it already, Joe. And it kind of goes into the Tumailu thing too. There's not a lot of variability in the game from game to game, and I know that it probably bugs some people, but it doesn't bug me because that just helps you deepen your understanding, your play of the game, I suppose, right? But I do like it when there's a little bit of variability at the beginning of the game where there's So instead of every building, hey, only these buildings. So that might affect the strategy I use in this particular game. So it's not always going to be the same chess match. So I do.
I'm picking it up, man. I'm picking it up. I'm right here with you.
This is another turnoff for some people, and again, not for me, but like the buildings are the buildings, right? That's what they are. So those are the buildings coming out in A and B and C.
And, totally static. Yeah, when I heard the game was static, I was like, whoa, that's interesting. There's very few Euro games utilize a static setup, especially I'm not familiar with really any Euro games of this weight that utilize a fully static setup.
I can't think of any.
I'd have to give that some thought. I'm sure they're out there.
As Muir chimed in.
Yeah, Mur would know, right? Good old 1,114 Mur.
This is a game I think you need, like Le Havre, like Agricola, perhaps, a scoring app for. And there is one. I use one. It's by some guy named Forrest. Probably not Forrest Gump. Didn't list his last name. But it fits right here on my phone. So I use that to score all these Uwe Rosenberg games, or at Labora especially, because then, when you're trying to score your tableau, like, okay, this village triggers these things, it's nice to just be able to have the app in your hand and just push buttons and have it do all the math and keep track of things. Very handy. Scoring app required.
Yeah, for sure. I think that there's just points for everything. And this is one of those higher scoring games. Like Agricola, I guess, I don't know, you're never scoring more 1, 2, or 3. So it's not like I need the app so much to tell me the sum of my points. It's more that I need the app to tell me like about where the breaks are, like did I actually get a point for this extra sheep?
Right.
Most of the time the answer is no. But I think in this one though, it definitely is, you get points for a lot of different things, and your full scores are going to end up pretty high, especially when you're adding up several different dwellings scoring, right? Or settlements. I'm sorry, they're settlements, right?
Yeah.
So definitely, yeah. The scoring here does get a little unwieldy, and having an app is a good solution.
What about you, Joe? Is there anything that has you looking sideways at the game from time to time?
You really hit on the main one for me, which is the main two, I would say, which are kind of connected, I would say. Yeah. That the game is totally static at the start, and that by itself just, doesn't exactly leave me wanting to reach for it, especially not wanting to play it at higher player counts with newer players. Like, I almost never want to, because I can't take really like a fringe strategy, because I feel like I've already kind of seen what can happen. I don't know. I just feel kind of like you can play suboptimally, but when there's at least some sort of variability, say like a game that has very limited variability, like Fields of Arla. I don't know if you ever tried that one, but the only randomness, if I'm recalling correctly, is like the buildings that you'll set up at the very beginning, and there's very few of them. There's a set of them that you always play with, and then there's only like an extra 10 of them, and the full pool is not that huge without the new expansion that's come out. But it does seem like he used a similar sort of very low amount of randomness, but there's not really a puzzle to solve at the beginning. It makes it much more, I would say, like a chess match, like where you're staring your opponent in the eye. And I mean, you nailed it with, we've got Ireland and France where's my more variance? Where's, where else did Uwe go on vacation?
We got to get him into Russia.
That's for certain. Yeah.
Over here.
Anybody got his address? We'll send him some vodka. What's your thoughts on Ireland versus France? Do you have a favorite or anything?
Honestly, I feel kind of like, and you might correct me on this, and I will stand corrected in that case.
Well,
but I felt kind of like the France game was the base game, and I felt like Ireland was a cool variant. But I still felt like I could go back to the base game. So I thought I did think that the Ireland game was a little bit more interesting. I think the whiskey was the main reason for that. Because, you've got this resource that you can spend without giving it to your other players. I thought that was really interesting. And regarding just I'm kind of like doing a quick look down at all the different buildings and things. And the game does still maintain quite a few of the same buildings, or at least ones that are functionally the same, even though a lot of the differences, I would say, are kind of cosmetic. But when it came down to it, I was more entranced by the Ireland map than I was the Ireland variant more so than the France variant. How about yourself?
I don't think I actually have a preference. I do like that France has that extra resource, though, the grapes, the wine,
Yeah. It doesn't. I thought it behaved very similar to other resources in the game, but I agree. It's more like one to convert as opposed to one that has that specific, kind of like points in use.
Yeah, so I don't have a preference. I like them both. I think I'm with you, though, where I do have a slight tendency maybe to prefer Ireland, and perhaps even for the same reason there's whiskey involved, but I do like wine, so
Yeah.
I don't know. We've been talking about a lot of Rosenberg games here too.
We definitely have got quite a few of them in here. Quite a few of them.
Yeah. Do you still? You said Le Havre. Is that still your favorite one?
Well, I think I have a hard time separating. I don't really rank games.
No, and they become arbitrary because it says so much to do about situation, and not every, even my favorite game wouldn't be appropriate in this, in a certain circumstance. And
yeah, but I don't think that I can separate Le Havre or at Labora like I said, at the top of the Rosenberg tree. I think those two guys are my favorites of his games.
I would say that what's interesting about those two being the top is I would consider those to maybe be genealogically the most similar. Their DNA strands share the most. And I would say that because when I consider the resource wheel in or at Labora, it most closely reminds me to the way that resources come out in Le Havre. It's just Le Havre is like, your first round is significantly more random than the rest of the game, which is not that big of a deal. But in or at Labora, the resource wheel has much of the same function. It just takes away your need to constantly place new resources out. Now, at the start of a round, you just move that resource one time, and it's kind of just representing, now whenever you cash that in and reset it back to zero, that's how many you take from the bank. So I think that it's largely a component upgrade, like a convenience, but it doesn't really change that, every certain amount of actions which are fixed, players' actions are totally fixed in both games. The resources are going to fill up. In Le Havre, it's more gradual throughout the round, whereas in or at Labora, it's end of round, here's everything for you to work with.
Yeah.
Interesting.
And I think that whereas Le Havre, I would consider Le Havre more of an economic game, like your points or your coins, and you really do end up working with lots of coins throughout the game. And if Uwe Rosenberg has made an economic game, I would say it's Le Havre. Whereas or at Labora, I think you were right to correct me on that earlier. This is more resource conversion, and the coins are just kind of a separate. Was that
just another resource?
Yeah, and it functions much the same as other ones. It doesn't, it's not your point, so to say, like it is so much in Le Havre. I do think, though, that whereas Le Havre has just enough, it has a really cool sort of setup where, you shuffle all the same buildings and then order them into 3 separate stacks, and what goes where will largely affect how the game plays out and what you have access to at what time. It's missing any element of spatial of a spatial player board.
Yeah.
There is nothing there, and it is definitely something that I feel like, that's the part of Or at Labora I almost want in Le Havre, and I feel like there's almost like this Frankenstein perfect of a Rosenberg sort of quote-unquote economic game that utilizes this sort of a player board, right? If you could just somehow find that system of Le Havre, which has now got like hundreds of different cards, of which you use what in a game? Like 5 special cards?
Special ones, yeah. There's not a ton.
And then you add to that there's the different, the way that the buildings will set up change every game as well as the order that, specific resources come out in throughout the round. That is a nice, that sort of thing would be great added to Or at Labora. But then Or at Labora has got just much stronger spatial aspect.
Yeah. Maybe you've hit on a good Or at Labora expansion, like those special cards in Le Havre. So there's some special cards that might show up in Ireland or France from time to time. So.
Yeah, I will sell that one for. Let's see. I'm gonna sell that one for 2 barrels of whiskey. So sorry, I don't give my ideas out for free. But if Uwe Rosenberg will drink 2 barrels of whiskey, I think I have to give it to him because I don't get anything when he uses whiskey to pay for something.
You just do the job.
You just got to do it. Yeah. Oh, you drank whiskey. Oh, yeah. I guess I have to do this. We shared the whiskey together. I understand. Yes, we shared it together. Well, that's a really interesting. Just because those 2 games sit at the top of your chart of Rosenberg games, it makes for a really interesting comparison. I like that. You also mentioned Glass Road lower down the list.
Yeah.
Now, I would say when it comes to a resource wheel, it's the most controversial resource wheel ever because, in Glass Road, it's like, oh, you want that resource? No, you just used it. Yes. You turned it into glass. Yes. Oh, you can't build that building anymore? That's the way she goes.
It's genius.
I love that. Yeah, and that's to me like if you were going to upgrade the resource wheel part of it, having some resources maybe that chase around the wheel on the backside of it, like in Glass Road, that could be something interesting. I don't know if it's even doable because the wheel is totally goes all the way around. But that to me is an interesting part of Glass Road that I like that the resource wheel in Or at Labora is so functional, and it does have a couple of breaks where there's 2 spots for 2, there's 2 spots for 4, and it changes based on player count. So I do appreciate those things, but as far as being more than just a convenience, I don't think I could make a case for that.
Yeah, no, I agree.
Oh, and it came apart. I gotta stop. Yeah. Well, yeah, it's made to. Yeah, it comes with like a bolt. You actually a metal or plastic. I think it's metal bolt that you actually can unscrew because you'll have to put it on the other side for different player counts. Which that does work quite nice. So to bring this back to player count, Tony, are you going to suggest this one at anything more than 2? Or is this a game that would you rather play something else to get your resource conversion spatial board building in Ireland and France?
Well, I guess I maybe can state that like this. I think that with 2 players, this is for me, right? This is my tastes. This is a Hall of Fame game with 2 players. I think this is a great game with 3, and I think it's a good game with 4.
Yeah.
Just that's me. That's my tastes. Hall of Fame, great, good. 2, 3, and 4 players.
Wow.
Tony, you and I really need to disagree more. It gives us more to talk about.
Feast for Odin's great.
Oh,
it's fantastic.
oh boy. Oh boy.
Fields of Arlo's boring. How about that?
Well,
How about
we
we
can
can do
disagree
something
about
really controversial and
we-
say it needs more dice.
Are you gonna field that one? I'll leave that one to you, Tony.
About Fields of Arlo?
Oh no. You know, or Labora needs more dice.
Oh, yeah, I don't think so.
Well, it was mentioned in our chat. Caverna has a very low amount of randomness in it. Caverna only has randomness in its round cards. Do you think that having somehow the rounds, you know, maybe the resources coming out in different orders or the settlements coming out in different places? I mean, really, to me, the reason I see Uwe putting these different resources in the game is because, you know, the progression is natural. You know, like I'm not going to want to see stone, you know, come out, like, let's just say like the wine, you know, I'm not going to want to see it totally flipped with another resource here, because it comes out at that point because it is tied to other buildings, and it's just tied much more to the variant. You know, it's a mechanic that's being introduced intentionally at a specific time. You know, like the static to me makes sense. And your settlements, while there are a few more nuances to them, mostly they're going to do the same thing as other settlements, but give you more points if you get them later in the game, thus also costing you more resources. Does that sound fairly accurate to you, Tony, or what's your take?
No, I guess I'm not going to disagree.
All right. Once again, we have solved the problem of the world here. So we've talked about the things that you love most about Or at Labora. We've talked about the things that are kind of, you know, your issues with the game, which were the same ones that prevent this one from being one that I'm going to reach for, unless I've got, like you said, a two-player game with another player that, just like myself, is looking for the same thing. And like you said, this is a culmination game. It's a pinnacle. It's a zenith. It's a Hall of Fame, as you said. You know, whereas it doesn't scale as good as maybe other games do by the same designer, or other games, other Euros of the same maybe ilk. Is there any other, like, you know, what is something that might make you not reach for Or at Labora? Is there anything else, or did we cover all your two main points?
No, I think that's what they are. I do want to suggest a change in what you just said, though.
Yes, I'm sure. No, I was
because, like you said,
course,
it doesn't scale well, and I think it scales fantastically in terms of player count. I think the thing that makes it degrade in its gameplay quality for me at that scale is just that's too many small, tiny print cards on the other side of the table for me to keep track of.
So the convention game, the super-sized Or at Labora game, is fine.
That might be fantastic. Don't tell Chad; he might actually make ones.
Well, I wouldn't be surprised if you did either, man. With all your laminated and you know what you need to do? You need to come out with a set of not charters, but American, like, pay stubs. You know, to make this set now instead of with peat bogs and stuff, we need, you know, maybe cranberry bogs in Wisconsin.
Man, we're talking a table hog at big size too.
Yeah. Absolutely, yeah. Yeah, make it huge, but now you can actually play it at the higher player counts and track all that information, and you know, it's already hard enough, man, just squinting at this player aid.
Yeah, I don't even.
Yeah, every single building is on it. It all, so much information. All of the cards in the game are printed out for each player to have.
Yeah,
I'm already having issues playing Legend of the Five Rings, reading all that tiny text, man. The older I get, the harder it is for me to read this tiny stuff.
Mm-hmm.
I guess way back in the Wayback Machine, even before Heavy Cardboard, I started a blog on BGG called Trumpet Lump It or Dump It.
Lump it or dump it. I love it.
and I quit doing that when I joined up with Edward. And the premise of that blog was that I saw games on a bell curve where there's a minority of games that are just bad games or really don't appeal to me at all. And
Yes.
there's a minority of games that just amaze me, just, thrill me, a lot of fun, etc. But most of the games that are produced are somewhere in the middle of that bell curve, right? Towards one end or the other. And so Trumpet was, if I'm going to talk about a game that is on the amazement side of that bell curve, I'm going to trumpet that game. If I'm going to talk about a game that, I don't think is good or doesn't appeal to me for whatever reason, that's on the dump it side, right? But most games are you just lump them along with the other games. It's a game on a pile of games is the phrase,
I think it's a really good analogy. Those three reactions to games are ones I can certainly relate with.
Yeah, this game's a trumpet, right? Like someone wants to play OEL, and I think it was my friend Matt about a month, 6 weeks ago. He's like, I've never played Ornate Labora, and like that makes my soul sing, man. It's like, okay, great, you want to play it? And it was a 3-player game because Dave was over, and this is a game for trumpeting, and like I said, it makes my soul sing when someone wants to play it or suggests it or says yes when I suggest it. This game is on the small end of that bell curve for me, and hopefully for other folks out there listening.
That's a really strong, glowing endorsement. And coming from you, Tony, is especially, I think, the fact that here we have a quote unquote, Euro game, where that's not necessarily, this isn't going to be an 18xx. This is definitely kind of in a different headspace. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, it's definitely a different headspace. And, I still love Euro games, though. Never stopped loving them.
Sure.
Just got addicted to the 18xx thing, and rightfully so, may I add. But I've never stopped playing and loving Euros, and Euros of all weights.
Sure. Yeah. Absolutely. So, what do you think? In terms of for Ornate Labora, is there an ideal? I mean, this would be for new players that have never played before. Playing with, how many times do you think you've played the game, Tony? Like, would you say double digits or?
Oh yeah, maybe 15, 16. I mean, that's not a lot of plays. Like I know there's people who've played various games, dozens, 100, whatever, right? So, but
well, is there dominant strategies coming out? What do you think the game system does to? Does there anything the game system needs to do to sort of like make it so these dominant strategies don't necessarily emerge? Or do you think that, what would you say about like when a game is totally static, whether or not dominant strategies would exist?
Well, if it's totally static and there's not balance in various paths, then there would be something. But, I don't know.
I've not heard of that with Ornate Labora. Have you heard of?
No, and I haven't even bothered to try to discover one or anything. I just get in there and do my best and enjoy the game. And and I don't care if I win or lose the game. I'm always going to try to play my best.
Well, I think Brian at HeavyCon appreciated your attitude too.
Manifested itself on that table. So, I'm not one looking for dominant strategies and things like that in games that I play. Because on one hand, if I find one that might dispel some, it might bring me back to earth on the game too.
So you're gonna keep your head pointed forward. You're gonna plug your nose.
I kind of felt that way about Emigration in Feast for Odin, for example.
Like it was just a very dominant strategy. I would agree with you there. Yeah,
pretty dang strong, and like that turns me off, So I haven't seen anything. I haven't tried to look for it. I haven't heard of anything. This is one of those games with a lot of pathways, and so you need to you want to get some wonders, those kind of things, right? Here's a dominant strategy. I have wonders and you don't. So
yeah. For sure.
I'm not necessarily preventing you from getting them or anything, So you're preventing your own self from doing that.
Oh yeah, I would agree with that. And I'm looking here for discussion, Tony. I'm not trying to take a big dig at the game.
Yeah.
I would say that because the strategy of the game, because so much of its strategy, regarding the spatial aspect to it is, to get the most beneficial settlements and put them in the best spots where you're going to be able to get, like all your orthogonal adjacencies are going to score high point scoring buildings, but then you're trying to balance that. I mean, every player is trying to do that, right? So it's not so much a dominant strategy, or it's more just how you play the game.
Correct.
Every player is trying to balance that together with this sort of side, the other side of the coin, which is that you can get a lot of points just from the resources themselves. And, do you abandon high-scoring point buildings, and not worry so much about your settlement scoring if you can try to pump out as many high-valued, point tokens, like your wonders and other. There are other ways to score points as well. I mean, here I am holding my toolbox of sorted tokens, and I'm counting. If I'm counting correctly, there is 11 different double-sided tokens in this game. Yeah,
that's a Le Havre madness right there.
Oh yeah.
And I say it's Le Havre turned even further up. I mean, almost all the resources you can imagine from Le Havre are present, and even more to boot. I guess there's no cows.
There's no fish.
And there's no fish. I'm wrong. We've debunked this. Okay.
What you're not wrong about is this is Le Havre amped up, right? In these resources.
Mm-hmm. I mean, you've got like we've already mentioned the wine. We've got your beer and grain. You have stone, which can just straight up be carved into like decorations, and I forget exactly what they're called, but they're worth points. You've got ornaments. That's right, ornaments. And then you've got I guess a lot of these are the same ones. I'm trying to think, that you could see from Le Havre, but you could also achieve, like straw. One of the biggest and most interesting parts is you've got, like wheat can turn into, what is it? It's can be turned into either, like the thing that you make into beer, which that's grain, right?
The malt.
Malt, that's right. It can be wheat that turns into malt, and wheat can also, just to give an example of a resource tree that we talked about earlier, wheat can be turned into straw,
right?
Which is like half of a fuel, which you're using fuel here, just like you would be in Le Havre. But wheat can also be turned into malt, correct?
And bread in France.
Bread.
Yeah. And flour.
Yes.
Right. I guess wheat can be turned into flour, and that flour can be turned into bread.
Mm-hmm.
On the French side, French bread.
Yeah, I think it's pronounced baguette. Oui. Yes. And I mean, just that's one example. That's a very robust decision. And Murr was in our chat earlier saying that is the decision he always seems to mess up. That every time he does his straw wheat bread math, he always messes it up a little bit and ends up with a half of a fuel from a straw that you just can't utilize, and one less bread than he needs. So if you like that sort of a decision in your Euros, that should give you an idea of whether or not Le Havre is, or not Le Havre, cheese, or Labora. I don't feel all that bad for saying it. It is kind of similar.
Yeah.
But so have we touched on all the main points so far?
I think for me.
Oh.
TC.
Yes, sir.
What has kept you for all this time? What has kept you at such a distance from these types of Euro games? Do you think it's just that the opportunity hasn't arisen, or what is it? What is something a game like this could maybe do to appeal more to you?
I think the biggest reason I haven't played this one is just that I haven't had the opportunity to play it. It's out of print at this point. I mean, you can get it on the aftermarket, but it seems to me like every time I want to play a Euro with someone who likes these Rosenberg style games, Le Havre is always hitting quite a bit. I've played that one a few times, and it's just the opportunity just hasn't hit yet. I mean, it's not the lack of wanting to play it. I think it's the availability of the game itself is what's hindering it, in my opinion.
Okay.
I mean, you know,
I would say that availability is definitely a factor, and just the difference. I mean, you got the same company printing them both, but here's what I think Le Havre has the appeal factor going for it, and that is that it doesn't have a static setup. It has something, you know, or at Labora is one of those games where you play it, you're like, this is awesome, it's so cool, and then because of its static setup, it is not one that with you know, the hobby of board games, I think, tends, especially the fact that we play so many different board games, you know, we want some sort of novelty in our experience. And Le Havre promises that. And I think that's why Le Havre has such a wide appeal. It shares quite a bit of lineage, but like you've mentioned, Tony, the spatial element in this game is extremely strong and something that's not present in the least in Le Havre. And that's what I think has led to people playing or at Labora rating it very highly on Board Game Geek. It does occupy a spot in the top 100 games of all time on the Board Game Geek list, but I don't see it getting popped out at game nights hardly at all either, TC. Le Havre, I have seen several times, though.
Yeah, I see Le Havre a lot. Usually if I'm like, hey, you want to play a Rosenberg, like it's either Agricula's coming out, Le Havre's coming out. Like I've been wanting to try Feast for Odin, but man, that game disappeared fast. It's like, oh, you already sold it. Okay, I guess I'm not trying that one out, and I don't want to buy it if you already got rid of it.
Yeah, what does that tell you?
Yeah, I know. It tells me I need to avoid that thing. And plus, honestly, some of my games that I do enjoy playing, like, give you an example, we just cracked open Gloomhaven. We're going to be playing that monster for a while. So it seems like the games I'm playing just take forever to learn and forever to play. It's like, and now with L5R, I'm done. It's like, but it's not for lack of asking. It's not for lack of wanting to play it. It just doesn't come out. And so many games have come out this year and the year before. It's you say or Labora like, oh, you know, I played that one. That's like past tense. I'm like, guys, the game's not that old. It was like 2011. They're treating it like it's ancient history. I'm like, no, Dune from 1979 is an old game. This is not.
It's a thoroughly modern feeling game.
Yeah.
I would say, you know, yeah, saying it's old, you know, it's, you know, there's definitely different schools of thought. When I play an older Knizia game, there's definitely like, you know, I would not call this one an old school Euro.
Yeah, but it's just that it seems to be the perception nowadays. I don't know if you've run across that, Tony, but it's just like if it's like over 2 years, it's like an old game. I'm like, holy cow, guys, really? Yeah. I'm an old man. Stop it.
Cult of the New is a real thing. You know?
It's
a game that 2 years old is old nowadays. You know,
it's either old or dead.
So many games come out.
Yeah,
so many.
Yeah, and I was just looking at the S and stuff this year. I'm just like seeing the halls people are bringing back. I'm like, A, when you're going to have time to play all those, B, are you going to play them again? And C, should I even bother with half of that stuff? It's just overwhelming sometimes.
I'm a notorious game renter, so
yeah, me too.
You too? Yeah.
Oh yeah, I'm like, oh, guy, I go to my local store, which is CloudCap. I'm like, are you guys gonna open that up because I'd like to try it? Oh yeah, okay, I'm gonna rent that and I'll bring it back. I'm like, yeah, you can put that back to shrink.
If I see a game that I think might interest me, I'll buy it, and if it doesn't interest me, I'll get rid of it. I have. 1, 2, I got a stack right here I need to put on auction, you know.
And I'm too lazy to do that kind of stuff. So, oh, hey, Liam, how's it going?
It's going good.
Hey.
Hey, Liam.
Hey, you want to say hi?
Hi.
Hey.
So, Joe, where does OEL fit in your Rosenberg pantheon?
Well, much for the same reasons that you played both sides here. You kind of said some of the negatives as well as you said some of the positives. And I would say that the only reason that this falls a bit lower for me than it would for you is because those negatives do, you know, like I admit that when I play this game and the fact that it's just nothing changes at the beginning, you know, nothing that I can sit down and be like, okay, what's going to be different this game? You know, that to me is something that I really do value in a game, and that's why there are very few static setup games that I go to. And I think the fact that I like this one at all says, just speaks to its virtues. But if I was going to do a Rosenberg, this one to me would definitely fall below Le Havre. It would be below Le Havre. I think for me, it's Agricola is just like the pinnacle. I love Glass Road. To me, Glass Road is just such a unique game, and I think the resource wheel is just much. It's a big part of the game. Like that resource wheel it has a mind of its own, and it's something that you wrestle with, and I love that. I love that sort of the way that you got to manipulate, not accidentally getting too much of a resource to prevent yourself. To me, that is just a real big attraction. And then so I would put Ora Labora below both of those. And I don't want to turn this into a huge but honestly, for me, they're two totally different games. Nothing at all similar. But if I had to choose between Feast for Odin and Ora Labora, it would, the times I would play the games would not in any way, I would know the difference between this is the time to play Ora Labora, this is the time to play Feast for Odin. Like, they are not at all similar, right? I don't think there's much overlap there in the groups that I would play one with versus the other. But if you made me choose one to chuck and one to keep, I would have a very difficult time doing that. Now, it does largely tend to be that I like games that I can play with, like, there's some people close to me that don't that aren't as heavy into the games. Obviously not Andy. Like, I'm sorry if you know Andrew Dennison from The Good, the Word, and the Ugly. No, he's a great guy, but he's totally lost. He is a lost individual. I don't think I'd ever even be able to play Ora Labora with him. The only reason I maybe would, Tony, is you. That's the only reason.
We have a goal. I'm a
because you said it was good. I think he would check it out.
If it's good enough for Tony, come on.
Has Andy not played that?
I do not believe he has. No,
because given what he likes, it'd be in his wheelhouse.
I would think so, but honestly, dude, like, Andy's not going to listen to anything I say about a Rosenberg game because, I like there are very few of them that I dislike. That even some of the ones that other people dislike, I love. Like, and that's why I think Glass Road. Glass Road is not one that rubs everybody the same way, and it's one that, to me, it is. It's actually fighting with Agricola for top spot.
Wow,
I like it that much. Yeah.
Nice.
But yeah, for Andy's not even played this, but. Because I'm kind of like, I'm not a very important pivot by any means, but I tend to play with lighter gamers as well as heavier gamers.
Mm-hmm. Same here.
Even though Andy considers everything I play light.
I think you consider Twilight Imperium 4th edition light at this point.
I think Andy would consider it epic. I don't want to see what he would or wouldn't think about it. Goosey games, as you said, you think Fields of Arla is boring, Tony. I totally get that sentiment, and that's why I do appreciate Feast for Odin, and it has gone over well for me in some situations. But like I said, Ora Labora not going to have the same use. But if I had to chuck one, man, I find Ora Labora takes a long time to play.
Yes.
It takes a very long time. Mm-hmm. Yes. Even like the 2-player game, just like Le Havre, the 2-player game is going to take you 2 hours to get through. You're talking awesome. Like a 2-hour plus game.
Yes.
Yeah. And it is rewarding. It is absolutely rewarding, and it is worth every minute. But it is, that length does tend to cause it to develop a little bit of a thin layer of dust on the shelf.
That's fair.
So yeah, that's kind of where I'd sit them, And of course, Patchwork at the top of everything. The pinnacle of humankind.
Now.
Pinnacle of buttons.
I do love Patchwork, actually. I love playing it. But it's like, to me, you know, like I was almost thinking about doing this sometime. A top 10 list of things I hate about top 10 lists. Because, yeah, but I would have a hard time ranking them. I would just want to say, like, here are 10 things that suck about top 10 lists.
There you go. Put
in
them
no
in any
particular order. Exactly. I like, you know, I struggle the same way, Tony. You know, like it's different games would come out in different times. And you know, the one that I would say of Uwe's games, looking at Mur's favorites, he's mentioned Mercator as being a part of his favorite games, as well as Gates of Loyang and Bonanza. Bonanza is, you know, that was like a different Uwe.
Yeah.
that was like a different Uwe. Gates of Loyang is one that I felt like I felt like I could pull the curtain back and see the instead of seeing the big, cool looking, imposing picture of the Wizard of Oz, I felt like I could see the man behind, you know, like the curtain, and that all of the things in that game were just like, you know, it was just cosmetic differences between goods. You know, there was never a real difference between your veggies and your leeks and stuff like that. It was just like they came out later, and thus they had to be planted in the smaller fields because they came out later. That was one that I liked some aspects, but that was one that I would have put significantly lower. Any comment on that side? On anything I said there, Tony?
Well, yeah, I do like Gates of Loyang. I think the scoring mechanism is the brilliant part of that game.
Bingo. Yeah. I love that too.
Yeah.
It's almost like a feeding. It was like his beginning of feeding, where, you know, you had to at least hold on to $1. If you didn't hold on to $1, you were just going to cry yourself to sleep.
Yes. Exactly.
If you could get a bunch of money, that's awesome. But if you couldn't get $1, that's game over right there.
Have you played, given your love of Patchwork, have you played Cottage Garden?
Oh yes. Oh yeah. I found that one to be a night, like it gave me a different feeling. Like I felt like it was more Tetris-y, but there was no economy to it. So I did appreciate that game, but it felt much more like it was just the spatial part of Patchwork without really any consideration for what I was leaving for my opponents, you know, by what I took. How about you?
Yeah, I was hoping it would be 4-player Patchwork, but it's just not.
No,
you know?
It's not at all. It is not.
Yeah, it is relaxing just to hang around and have a drink with friends. And I like the way you select the tiles, but
yes,
just not Patchwork with 4.
No, it is not. It is not. I like that you can see further into the future what your options are going to be.
Absolutely.
Whereas with Patchwork, you know, it's much more dependent on what your opponent leaves to you by what they take. You know, you can you know, intentionally jump over something that you're worried your opponents now set themselves up for. Whereas in Cottage Garden, you know, you might be sitting there like, I hope he doesn't take this, or I hope she doesn't take this, but you know, it's largely, you know, it feels to me like it's a lot of recycling that happens in that game. And especially since it's like you play like 5 games of Patchwork, you know, you end up filling up your tiles. It feels quite a bit different, but it definitely brings solely the spatial aspect out.
Are you interested in Newsfjord?
Yes. Have you any interest in that, or any news?
Yeah, I would love to play it. I have not played it yet. Because I hear, you know, some good things about it. So it's got some spatial stuff, slightly spatial at least, not like Aura at Labora spatial, but kind of Glass Road spatial, it looks like.
Yeah. Trent Trent played it and said that Glass Road was the closest comparison that he would give to it, but it still had quite a bit of a different core mechanism going on with it.
Yeah, seems like maybe there's something of an economy there. So I'm definitely interested in getting a copy and giving it a fly.
Yes, me as well. That's definitely, I would say, top of my list. You know, I don't want to be the cult of the noob. You know, as TC has said, you know, I don't want to be the cult of the noob, but when it comes down to like if Rosenberg is going to drop a game and the first thing that somebody says is it's kind of like Glass Road, it doesn't matter if they mean that in a positive or a negative way. Bingo.
Right.
Yeah.
Like, you rang my bell.
What about Indian Summer? What do you think about that?
I think it's going to be similar, more like it's going to be more along the lines of Cottage Garden is what I got the feel from looking at it, is that it's one that I'm going to look at when it gets out, and if I get it, I'll have the intention of playing it with, a different group than maybe my core group. How about you?
Yeah, I don't know. I don't think I'm going to give it a whirl because there's like the stealing of tiles from other players. It's like you acquire tiles and put them on your board, but there's some things you can do, the mushroom or something like that. When you spend those, you can actually steal a tile from another player's supply.
Oh, direct interaction.
Yeah, that's borderline Ameritrash, right?
What do you think, TC? Is all of a sudden Uwe Rosenberg?
What? Okay.
Yeah, TC's all in there. Yeah.
It works for me. Like, I would say that further down that road, using other players' workers in or at Labora is a largely interactive move, and it is targeting one player. The other player is not, is maybe benefiting vicariously through you expending the extra resources and the other player getting hurt. And that's, I think, why maybe I do prefer it so much at 2. And that's why a game like that Uwe designed, like Babel, that's just, you go for the throat over and over and over. And that's what the whole game is, right, TC?
Yeah,
it is very. So that's why I think that 2-player, for me, I actually feel with how interactive that aspect is, I prefer it with 2, even without the added inconvenience of a larger footprint and smaller and the same 4-point font.
4-point font.
Oh, it's got to be, man. This has to be 4-point font. They couldn't have printed it any thinner. I'm serious, man. It's double-sided too.
Jeez.
All kinds of the player aid is
that looks awesome.
Have we sold it to you yet, TC?
Oh yeah, well, I've been wanting to play it for a while now. You just whetted my appetite. It's just like I said, finding someone with a copy. Even finding one to rent's a problem.
Yeah. No, I feel you, man. And that's honestly, that's kind of like Z-Man woes as a Eurogamer. If I see a game that I'm interested in and I see a Z-Man thing on the cover, it's like, okay, wave 1, picking that thing up.
Yeah, you better pick it up quick.
Yeah, I guess that works.
Did Mayfair publish this thing?
It maybe would have eventually made it to Mayfair because it does look like a Lookout game, but it's a Lookout game, but it's back before Lookout was exclusively Mayfair, and so not a Mayfair game, unfortunately. But maybe that won't be such a bad thing, considering that Mayfair may or may not.
Yeah, I'm wondering how that's going to affect availability in the future.
Yeah. They may or may not fare well.
Yeah, no kidding.
That's true. May not. There you go. That was what was on the tip there. Thank you so much. You pulled the pin earlier. This was me. Yeah, you got the grenade.
It's a hot potato.
Definitely. So, would you suggest players? What is the ideal player of or at Labora? Is this just? Would you suggest this to anybody, new players? Tony, do you have a different total attitude towards introducing new folks to games, or would you suggest a different game to sort of prep them for this?
I tend to think about the person and what I know they like and I consider those things when I'm trying to introduce people to games, unless of course it's a total random stranger at a con or something, and then you got nothing to go on. You can tell them about the game and see if they like it or not, but so for this, there's games, I call them Robin games and non-Robin games. Yeah, that's my wife. And like her tastes are varied. She likes some heavier games and some not, and this is definitely not a Robin game. So I probably wouldn't introduce this to anybody necessarily. You know, that I'd have to know something about what they like.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's not a Caroline game. Cottage Garden is a Caroline game.
I can almost guarantee it wouldn't be a Carissa game either.
No, but Carissa is quite a different, you know, like a Carissa game does not mean the same. I think that Robin and Caroline games probably share a similar, you know, like she likes, Carissa is a war gamer.
Yeah, she's like, do we shoot at each other? I'm like, yeah, I'm in. Is it the American Revolution? Yeah, I'm in.
Nice job, sir. Good.
Yeah. In fact, we're still bludgeoning our way through Empire of the Sun. We are really enjoying that thing, but that is a monster.
Yeah. That's very cool.
Yeah. Our retirement game is going to be Paths of Glory. We're going to be sitting at a retirement home playing that 24/7.
It's hard getting a read on my wife sometimes because she likes Splendor and she likes Craftsman. You know, those are like opposite sides, and it's things in the middle. It's a tough read sometimes, but I know there's certain mechanics and things that I know she gets into, and others that she doesn't. So,
I think a lot of it tends on, you know, Caroline can sometimes pick up that wind of inspiration from something, you know, and a lot of it has to do with theme. But she liked Fields of Arla. So she liked Fields of Arla and Cottage Garden. Thus, maybe, Tony, as per your definitions, Caroline likes boring games.
Well, it would seem.
But she, you know, there was elements about Fields of Arla that, you know, she was able to pick up, and I agree though, you know, that there's kind of some outliers, but for the most part, if a game's going to go over a half an hour to an hour, I would hesitate to suggest it to her. And especially any direct interaction, and Caroline's going to be like, yeah, there is no direct interaction in that game. No.
My sheep.
Yeah. Yeah, and if there is any direct interaction, we don't play that. Yeah. You know, we don't.
No, same.
We aren't. Yeah.
Like with the Indian Summer, right? If I took one of her tiles, that would be hell to pay.
Oh yeah, what I've tried to do, because I want to be able to at least play with it if it's a part of a game. So I try to like kind of like almost like force her into a role where she has to take something from me or attack me. And I did that once with Santorini. You know, just like this simple 10-minute abstract game, and you get these special abilities, and one of them is called, I think, like Baya or something like that. I forget, but it's one where you can actually like remove an opponent's worker, and I kept trying to get her to take that one, you know, so that she would be able to attack me, and she just wouldn't though. You know, she's like, I'd rather not play this game.
Wow.
You know,
That's kind of the exact opposite, though. The last game I played with Chris that I really enjoyed was Fields of Despair. Oh, and I was Germany, and I was dealing with the Eastern Front, and she found the weakness in my line, and she smashed through it, and I was all on the rebound after that, and she was giggling the whole time.
I like that girl.
Yeah. Like, oh, crap. What do I do now? I got to regroup, and hidden blocks. Oh, this game's awesome.
I think, Tony, that you're going to get to meet her, you know. I think, spoiler alert, we're going to talk about Gettysburg all together.
Awesome.
Yeah, she really likes that Martin Wallace Gettysburg. That's a top game. And that was such a bizarre way to get that game. I was like, oh, it's only $20. Turns out it was like a super limited run.
Yeah.
And we played the crap out of it, and I tore the board up. I'm like, oh, I could have gotten a lot of money for that game. Yeah. Oh, well.
The command and control mechanism is, I guess I'm using this word a lot now, genius.
Yeah, and you can put your tank, your cannons on a hill, and even just firing them like reveals their location. And oh, that game's so cool! Yeah. It's so cool. The little dudes on the map, oh, they're so cool.
Meeples with keppies.
Yeah. Oh, this one's nailed. This is a kneeling one. He's a cavalry, and he can like drag the cannon around. And oh, yeah, we'll talk about that another day. But we love that game. It's such a shame it's so hard to find.
Yeah, and the Waterloo version.
That's still on my list of games to find. But
well, Hope our listeners have enjoyed this this interlude here.
Sorry, here I go derailing everything again.
This is a trailer. Yeah. You know what, TC? What you should do though is you should market it as a trailer for the upcoming episode. You could pull it from the Or at Labora because I'm gonna my next my transition is just gonna be summing up Aura at Labora. Final thoughts. So TC, see what you can work with making a trailer for the next episode.
Yeah, or just leave it in here as a hidden bonus. If you can find the trailer, we'll give you you'll get the no prize.
So Tony, or at Labora, do you think, first of all, could you see any game replacing it? And if so, why? Or do you think that Or at Labora is always going to have a spot?
It's always going to have a spot.
Mm-hmm.
And I often chuckle at those geek lists where it's like, oh, this game fired that game and stuff like that. Games don't fire games for me. Maybe I'm weird. Maybe I'm the exception. I'm on the backside of that bell curve, but games don't fire games for me. And there's really no other game kind of like this one, so no, this game, like I said, Hall of Fame with 2. I mean, it's never going anywhere. It's on my shelf forever. I have a limit. I've built some shelves down there, some IKEA shelves, and that is the limit of my game collection. So if something goes on, something has to come on.
So you are firing games, Tony.
Well, yes, I guess in that respect, but not because some other game replaced it. I'm firing it because it's like, when am I going to get this on the table again? Or, those kind of things, right? Or it is on that bottom half of the bell curve where it's just meh, whatever. It didn't appeal to me for some reason, so it goes away. So I fire games because of that, not because this other game does that same thing better.
Mm-hmm. I would agree with you, and I would say that I don't think we're going to see an Or at Labora replacement. I'm not sitting on the edge of my seat expecting Uwe Rosenberg to come back to this system. I feel like he's departed almost entirely from this potentially golden age of his design, and now we're seeing a different Uwe Rosenberg, an Uwe Rosenberg that's more trying to bring, I think, game systems that depict kind of quotidian themes, but do so in a very intricate way, in a very well-developed way. But now I think we're seeing, as opposed to this tight, difficult system that, you can really, heavily interact with other players in a really interesting way and novel way. I don't think we're seeing that so much. I think we're seeing largely, I do my thing, you do your thing, sandboxy style games coming from Uwe Rosenberg. And I think that it's, in a way, it's the newer games still have a place for me, but they in no way are looking to fire, quote unquote, this game. Because I think for me, it does happen frequently where I play a game and I'm like, after I play this, I can't imagine going and playing this game just because I'm looking for the same thing in both. And it's not as, I read those lists and I'm shocked a lot of times by some of the comparisons that those folks draw. A lot of them are solely thematic, so they'll be like, this is my Dungeons and Dragons themed game or something like that, and it's like, it seems so arbitrary to me, because for me, my brain sorts it into gameplay,
right.
And that's not always the case. So that's why I don't think we see a replacement.
Yeah. Uwe's games are becoming a lot more open too. So more sandboxy. One of those firing comparisons is like Caverna and Agricola. I saw when Caverna came out, I saw a lot of like, oh, this fires Agricola for me and everything. Like, and I can kind of see those comparisons because in a lot of ways there's a lot of similarities between those games, right? Mm-hmm. But I guess one doesn't fire the other for me because they both give me a different level of a different kind of fun, I guess. Agricola is more thinky fun, and Caverna is just more fun or something. You know what I mean? Like,
you did not, Tony. You did not just drop the F-bomb.
Fun.
You used fun to describe fun.
It's a different feeling I get from the two games, even though
it's like the nice way of saying, like empty fun, almost like shallow fun. That's what I interpret, because if you can't think of a better word for it, that's what it means.
Huh. Well, it's not that, because it's not empty or shallow.
No. Well, I just think like, I'm sorry, Tony. I don't want to cut you off there. That's
keep going. Keep going.
Digging a hole. Digging a hole.
I'm going to dig a hole. And here's why, Tony. Because we did an episode on The Good, the Bored, and the Ugly called The F Word, and it was just all about fun. It was all about fun. And I've had people tell me, I've had, a former co-host and a good friend of mine who's told me, like that I don't understand fun, that, it's something where like, I just don't get fun. And it's, this game is fun. It's like, no, you can't just say, I like this game. It's fun. It's a good game. All of those things are just like it. It's a fun game. I think that when it comes down to it, is it that you appreciate this game more as an exercise in moving bits around a board and evoking a certain like idea in your head, or is it that you're enjoying it from a strategic or tactical competitive vantage point? That's what I've interpreted as.
Yeah, and I guess with both of those two specific games, I find them both to be enjoyable in their strategic, competitive aspect. But one is definitely more challenging to play, and I like that. It's kind of like the place and time thing. Like Agricola has a place and time, and for me, Caverna has a place and time, and group as well.
Is this similar to your comparison maybe between Patchwork and Cottage Garden?
Oh yeah, sure. That sounds like it would be pretty fair to say, but Patchwork always.
See, there you go, man.
Patchwork is fun.
That's I think what we've done here though is we've seen a different, like for me, like Caverna to me is like it just it's I think I taste that it's like it's like just it's a ugh.
When I play Caverna, I can multitask. When I play Agricola, I have to only play Agricola.
Well, I would posit that the really next high level of playing in Caverna is actually more interactive, even so than Agricola, because it involves predicting chains of supply that your opponent is going for and cutting them off at the knees, because every single building is available at the beginning. Yeah. It's all out there, and I think that in a way that's something that at Labora, that never suffered from that problem. In Caverna, it's like, here's all of the buildings in all of the game, all of the time, boom, right here. And it's
but there still is the cutting off at the knees in OEL, because like I am going to beat you to that brewery building.
It is absolutely, absolutely, but it's something that it's something that I think that to cut somebody off at the knees in that aspect, if you can see like, you kind of have to gauge like they're getting, you almost have to see like 4 turns in advance. All right, I've lost the brewery. How do I make the best out of this, right? I think that's what you do. Whereas in Caverna, like I could grab a tile that sets me up for 2 tiles later on down the line. I could set up like the production, but then I could see, another player at the table just go, oh yeah, I'm going to go ahead and take this tile that gets, that's the tile that you need for the points, to turn those eventually into points most efficiently. And I can just take it, because there's no prereqs, for any tiles. It's just like I acquired the resource, I just get it. Mm-hmm. And that's something that really turns me off personally about Caverna. And that's, I think, like in at Labora, because those are going to be available at a specific time, yeah, you can still jump in, but it's definitely something that you can see a little bit more, like, because there isn't any sort of randomness to it, it's to me that I guess I'm more accepting about that system. I don't know. Maybe it's arbitrary, but it's something that Caverna to me does do away with a lot of the real heavy strategy and the difficulty of the like you don't really need to focus on a separate system of efficiently feeding your family. In Caverna, it's just kind of like, well, what's worth the least points? And usually you have several options, and you just choose the one that's worth 3 points instead of 4, and you feed them that. But in Agricola, you've got to have some way to be, there's more things to that system, and that's what I love about it. Additionally, there are other elements to the game, but yeah, I don't see Uwe designing like. I thought that the cards in A Feast for Odin were about the closest to the cards in Agricola that I'd seen. Just, they were not nearly as impactful, but I liked, and we came up with a system. We drafted those at the beginning of the game. We just did like an Agricola draft, and then you just had like an available pool and a not available pool.
Yeah,
so
we did the same.
Yeah, that fixed the draw cards for the win issue. But it definitely didn't perfect the game by any means, and I definitely agree with you with the issues there. But I do think that it's a lot of it just shows this departure from, from really like tight interactive Euros.
Yeah,
and I think it's becoming less and less like that, and more, a game that's pleasant.
Yeah, he's taken out some of the pressures.
Mm-hmm. Yes, exactly.
Like feeding in Agricola and Le Havre, and there's no feeding at Labora, but I feel like purchasing the settlements, because it costs food and energy, that it's kind of like feeding, because you have a pressure to get those settlements out, so you need to stock up on your food. So it's kind of like a feeding mechanism. Yeah,
I agree. There's a lot of different ways that you can, but yeah, the fact that you're not, you're never at any point having to feed in or at Labora. However, like just, everything then is focused into like what's the most points, and what's going to best take advantage of the settlements that are out there, the board that I've got in front of me, how am I going to jump on that board at the right time? What's up?
But it is food. It is food. The pressure to have food to build those settlements. So I think it's still present in OEL.
Mm-hmm. Oh, yes, I would agree with that. Yeah. You're just not going to be, because you need those settlements. I've never seen anybody, you can't just ignore settlements fully.
Right, 30 food for one of those big ones. Oh, crap.
But it interacts nicely with the other systems there. It's not, I would say even a game like Agricola, there isn't a ton of interaction between your ranching and, your farming side of the game, even though those are kind of like the two quote unquote strategies that people identify. I wouldn't so much say that. There's not really, a difference like there is in between your resource conversion for points versus your settlement scoring for points, but they are very interlocked, and that's what's really beautiful about the system.
Cool.
All right, well, we got an interesting definition here. Fun in gaming is what you have between being confused and bored.
Confused. I don't know. I probably have a different definition of fun. It usually involves my wife destroying me at a game.
Yeah. TC's definition of fun involves making explosion sounds with his mouth.
Yeah, pretty much. While I'm getting obliterated.
When he rolls the dice.
No. Oh, no. That's bad.
I think fun comes after the confusion.
Yeah.
Well, although some games keep you in the confusion, and that's
I think he's saying it's between confused and bored. So like after confusion, fun, and then after that fun wears off, you're bored.
Gotcha.
Mm-hmm. I like that.
Yeah. Is that Myrrh?
That is Myrrh. Yes. The Myrrh streak, the great Myrrh, Brett Math.
Myrrh the Great.
Yes. Myrrh, you have been absolutely irreplaceable in this chat here, as always, living up to your reputation, and thank you very much for joining us. Is there any final things here before we end this episode so we can start planning our next episode of Gettysburg? Yeah. TC basically started that episode without my consent. Thank you very much, TC.
It's my thing.
He didn't pick a date yet, so you're still in the clear, Joe.
Yeah.
So, no final thoughts then, guys? Or we all? We've had time for final thoughts. I think we've talked about Or at Labora, and I think you've done a great job here, Tony, as I would expect, to talk about all different aspects of this game, what interests you, and what makes it a Hall of Fame game. So, hopefully, anybody With 2. Yeah. Asterisks.
Asterisk.
Read the fine print. So,
Indeed.
yeah, and it was eerie to me how much of what you said ended up lining up with my own thoughts. Now, that could just be that I'm derivative because you were the one who first introduced me to the game, and maybe all of those things echoed so much in my mind that I began thinking of them as my own thoughts. But nevertheless, it's been great to hear you say them and give this really great game, or good with 4, great with 3, Hall of Fame with 2. Yes, we've got it all. The long view treatment. Thank you very much for joining us, Tony.
TC and Joe, it's been my pleasure, guys.
Oh, it's always a pleasure to have you on, Tony. I really appreciate you coming on.
Anytime, guys.
All right, well, I hope you guys have enjoyed this episode of The Long View, and catch us next time. Good night.